So the session is on how to study for CFA Level 2. First thing I have for you is congratulations. So what was the passing percentage for Level 1? I mean your exams? 43%. Right. So which means if there were 100 people who were writing the exams, the ones sitting here are among the 43 of them. Do you know on an average what is the passing percentage for CF Level 2?
46.
About 46%. So Ajit says it's time 46 tha. So 46%. So how many people are we looking at?
18.
About 18 odd people. So if you just look at the percentage is the same. Right? So when I was a student writing the exams, I looked at during my times also percentage were more or less similar. So if you try to gauge the exam by that level, you would be substantially underestimating the exam, because when these 100 people wrote the exams, and I'm sure you were on the center, you would realize that there are a lot of people who did not even know how to use the calculator. There are a lot of people who just come and write the exams because they have paid the fees, and of course they paid a lot of fees, plus the exams were at nice centers. So they wanted to get a feel of the examination. But when you're writing level 2, you're competing with people who have already cleared level 1, and therefore the level of competition itself is substantially higher. So your target is to be one of those 18 people who are going to pass the CFA level 2 examinations. So today's session I'm going to divide into 4 parts. The first 2 parts is more generic discussion. Most of you might already know it. So what is the curriculum, topic weights, and what sequence we would be using here in the class? What is the format? This is where I think I would be able to add significant value. So we will discuss how to study for level 2 and how that approach is going to be different from level 1, and then how we are going to do this together. Okay, so let's start and look at the subjects. So this I picked up from the CFA Institute website. Some of the things you would like to observe. At level 2, the weights are given in a range. So how should we interpret this? So what do they mean by 10 to 15%?
They have the leeway to have it.
Yeah, so typically 5% is one case study. We will discuss. You would be having case studies at level 2. So with ethics, we are looking at either 2 or 3 cases, right? So which means the exam writers have a significant bandwidth at level 2 to determine what questions are to be put. I mean, how many questions are to be tested from a particular subject. So a day before the exam, one of the things that you would be asking everyone else around, and you would be asking people who passed L2 previously, that how many cases were tested from ethics on the last exam, or at least, of course, if you do that. Yeah, so you would be in violation of ethics, but one of the things you would be really curious about is how many cases were FRA tested. Plus another mystery adding to the game is which of the cases were tested in the morning, which of the cases were tested in the afternoon, because if you have a good sense of that, you know what to prepare for in the afternoon break of 2 hours. So all those parts we will discuss later on. Just focus on a few areas here. Look at the weight of FRA. So the importance of FRA is continued from L1 to L2 as well. So you are looking at minimum 3 cases, you are looking at maximum 4 cases. Then the most important subject, and maybe one of the easier subjects at level 2, which is equity. So again we are looking at either 3 to 5 cases, and then fixed income, which is 10 to 20, but the gap is significantly higher. So we can have either 2 cases or 4 cases. So what typically strategy that people have is they focus on corporate finance. Of course, you have to focus on all of them, but they focus on corporate finance, FRA, equity. The subjects also to a large extent interlinked. And these 3 subjects would constitute roughly 40 to 50% of your testable material on the examination, which is going to be the core syllabus for level 2. So what is the recommended sequence here? Starting point, so we would be dividing subjects into 3 groups. Okay, so the first group is corporate finance, FRA, and equity. How many from Sunday batch of level 1 here? Okay, so this is how we did this in the class. We started with corporate finance, then we went on to FRA, we went on to equity. Now, all of these areas are going to draw extremely heavily from what concepts you learned at CFA Level 1. In fact, all the 3 subjects. And therefore, here in the classes, before we start every subject, we would be having a small session of 20 to 30 minutes for every subject, where we would revise all the concepts from level 1 which are required at level 2. I can see some happy faces now. Then the second block, so this is where we will do all the remaining assets. So we will start with derivatives, then fixed income, and then alternative investments. Then in the third block, we will do quant, portfolio management, and economics. Are we missing out on something? Ethics. So ethics is something that we should be doing right from the beginning of our preparation cycle. So the good news for you is that ethics does not change. Whatever ethics you studied at L1, more or less the same part of ethics gets repeated at L2. But the not so good news is that there are many people every year who score above 70 in ethics at L1 and they end up below 50 at L2. So just because you scored well in ethics at CFA level 1 does not mean that you've become an ethical person. It does not mean that you're going to score good at CFA level 2. So again, this is something that we are not going to underestimate. The strategy is to keep on practicing ethics throughout the cycle so that you feel reasonably confident. Then which are the most difficult subjects? Can you guess? FRA? This is on your experience. This is with your experience of level 1. एक ही बोलो, कितने बोलोगे आप? FRA. How many for FRA here? How many for ethics? Okay. Quant, fixed income, derivatives. सब याद कर PM. Okay. So I'll tell you, I was thinking about this when I built this presentation about which subjects people find most difficult. So I thought of dividing this into 3 parts. So what subjects you find most difficult before the exams, okay, during your preparation cycle. What subjects people generally find most difficult during the exams, and what subjects people score lowest. Okay, so maybe that would give us a better perspective of which is really the most difficult subject. So before the exam, most of the people struggle with derivatives. Okay, now not all of them, but most of the people will struggle with derivatives. This year they have completely revamped the subject. All the previous readings have been removed and they have added new readings. However, the content is to a large extent similar. I mean, of course there are differences, but to a large extent derivative is there. Then a lot of people find portfolio management quite difficult at L2. Okay, so depending on what background you're coming from. So if you're from engineering background, FRA is going to trouble you to a large extent. From engineering background, again, derivatives and PM might not be so difficult. During the exam is generally a mystery. So one of the subject where people always are not confident is ethics. Right? So no matter how well you're prepared, you always feel that B and C were the correct options. And then you kind of make a guess between the two. Based on the feedback of last 2-3 exams, PM turned out to be a little bit of difficult. Fixed income might or might not turn out to be difficult. Again, derivative might turn out to be difficult. So which means FRA, which generally people fear to be quite difficult, after or during the experience of writing the exam, they're generally okay with FRA. And maybe you might have felt the same at L1 as well. Did you? That the preparation was quite difficult, but a lot of people came and said that the paper was at par with maybe BCom examinations. So this is what we look at during the exams. Now lowest score could be ethics. This season PM turned out to be quite difficult. So there were many candidates who kind of struggled with PM, and then there were some candidates who struggled with fixed income. Okay, but again, what is the idea? What do we learn from this is your best shot at passing CFA level 2 is if you're scoring all the 10 subjects in the above 70 range. Okay, so if you're above 70, all the 10, you're still okay. Now, last to last level 2, when we analyze mark sheets, people who did not score below 50, a lot of subjects, that means they were either in the middle range or in the last range, they were all right. Many of them passed. This exam, the cycle got relatively inverted. The papers were substantially easier based on the feedback, the previous exam that I'm referring to, 2016. So people who had at least 5 to 6 in the top section, those were the ones who were able to pass. Are you following what I'm trying to say? So which means if the papers are easier, then if you're in the middle range, 50 to 70, that's not going to help. Then you have to be in the top range. If the papers are very difficult, then not going below 50 is going to be the challenge. So that's something that we need to look at. Okay, yeah. So exam format now. So now there are 3 papers, morning 9 to 12, afternoon 2 to 5, and evening, no? Okay. So morning 9 to 12, afternoon 2 to 5. How many questions in the morning? 60 questions. And 60 questions in the afternoon. Right, so at level 1, you had 120 questions, 3 hours. Now you just have 60 questions. Sounds good? However, those questions would be broken down into 10 cases. Okay, so 10 cases. Now I don't like calling them cases because typically a case study is supposed to be extremely elaborate with 8 to 9 pages with in-depth data given. These are more of kind of short stories. Okay, average size is about 2.5 pages, and 2.5 pages of the actual exam papers. And you must have seen that the content on one page there is substantially lesser. So the type of pages that you read, your notes, you're looking at about 1.5 page or 1 page case study. Okay, so 10 cases, and one case will have how many questions? 6 questions. So what do you think? Is it from a mathematical probability perspective, does it improve your chances or it reduces your chances? It reduces your chances because now the number of questions are less. Right? And number of questions are less, that means you can afford to get very few questions wrong. Are you following this? So if it's a case study of 6 questions, you get 2 of them wrong, you're automatically in the middle range. And because the number of questions are less, your ability to be precise, ability to hit all at least 5 out of the 6, that is something that you need to work on. So that's something that needs to be considered. Second point I wanted to bring up is, I'll show you an example how it works. So level 1, they'll give you a question like this, the one that we just solved here. So they will give you covariance, they will give you variance, they might give you RFR, they might give you equity risk premium. So covariance divided by variance, it will give us beta. It will give you RFR, it will give you equity risk premium. You just do a simple CAPM formula, you get cost of equity. So what they checked at level 1, they checked whether you knew those formulas and whether you knew how to integrate that beta into your equation. So level 1 was more about your understanding of the terminology and understanding of the basic concepts. At level 2, there would be a 2.5 page case study. Plus this data would be scattered. Maybe covariance would be somewhere here, variance would be somewhere here in the third paragraph, and maybe equity risk premium and RFR data would be here. Plus the question would not directly ask you to calculate cost of equity. The question would be something where your cost of equity interpretation is required. Are you following what I'm trying to say? So level 2 is not about just knowing the stuff. Okay, so at level 1 you could get away by remembering formulas and knowing that agar graph aise hoga, to if the graph is like this, then this is the answer, but if the graph is like this, then this is the answer. Level 2, that will not work. So if you're not good with concepts at L1, then you're going to struggle a lot at L2 because it draws heavily from those concepts. Okay. So level 2 skill is we need to be really, really good with concepts. And second, we need to develop the ability to apply. Right. So when you look at a case study, and typical strategy, of course, we'll discuss that in depth, that you're going to read the questions first. I recommend reading 6 questions first, and then you start looking at the case study. So when you read the question, right after reading the question, I mean, your level of preparation should be so much that right after reading the first question, you should know what is the data I'm looking for in the case study. Are you following what I'm trying to say? And once you have reached that level where you understand what data am I supposed to look in the case study, then you're going to be all right. But then if you're someone who would look at the data and then determine how to solve, then maybe you would get trapped because they're going to give you too much of data. Okay, so this thing will come only with practice. So when you keep on solving case studies from different sources, automatically you will develop the skill to apply. Any questions here? Yeah, the question that's being asked, that is time management generally a problem. So 95% of the people who come here, time management is generally not a problem. Time management is problem for those candidates who see a question, they know how to solve, but they're not able to recall the formula on the exam. So they spend additional 1 minute thinking कि इसका formula क्या था, what was the formula, I'm not able to recall what was the denominator, was it variance of x or variance of m. So if you are that level of preparation, time is going to be a big trouble. But if you're someone who's really strong with concepts, then you just need to apply, you're going to be okay with time. But you still have to be mechanical. One of the things that really goes wrong on the exams is your ego. Okay, that you're doing a question and you're really confident, maybe I'm really good at derivatives, nothing can go wrong. And then there comes a question, you know how to do it, but you're somehow not able to get the answer, or maybe your answer is not matching. So your ego would not allow you to move on. And if you end up spending too much of time on that question, then your paper is gone for a toss. Okay, so that's something that we will discuss when we go on to mock exams.
The questions be interrelated?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good one. He asked, will the questions be interrelated? Yes. And that's one of the reason why we have these ranges. Okay, of course, now they don't say it explicitly, but for example, now your economics has some element of forex. Now forex is also being repeated in equity. There could also be a forex swap in derivatives. So you might argue saying that why there was so much of forex in derivative. So they might say that we put some part of the economics in that case study. So subjects are interrelated. There's also a lot of duplication. So private company valuation gets repeated multiple times. It will be repeated in corporate finance, it will be repeated in equity, it will be repeated in alternative investments. Okay, so there are repetitions, there are also small inconsistencies. So you'll have to remember, if this question comes in corporate finance, this is how I'm going to solve. But if the same question, similar question comes in equity, this is how I'm going to solve. But those would be in bits and pieces. Yeah, good one. So what he asked is, he said there's a case study and there are 6 questions. So is it that if I get the first one wrong, and will I also get the second one wrong? Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, at times there are questions which are interlinked. So if you don't have, you need to use the answer of question A to find out what would be the answer of question B. But very few times. But most of the time, they are kind of separate. Another thing that works is, at least that's what our people have been doing, and that's the feedback I'm getting. So typically your case study will have 6 to 7 paragraphs. So what some of the people practice this exams, they read question number 1, they read paragraph number 1, they captured the data, they solved. Okay. Now 8 out of 10 case studies this technique works. But there would be 2 case studies where some data required for question number 1 would be somewhere here. And then those are the case studies where you get trapped. But again, this stuff we discuss when we go on to mock exams. Yeah. The question that's being asked, all the 60 questions are MCQs, yes, in a case study format. No. The question he asked, in a case study, whether all the questions are from same subject or one question from ethics, one from economics, no. So they will say that this case study is from ethics. Okay, it would be explicitly given to you that question number 1 to 6 is ethics. Ideally, all the 6 questions would be ethics. I mean, with ethics, you would not mix anything else. But if you have a case study, let's say from derivative, it might require some of the knowledge you learned in economics. But the case study will be of derivatives.